Okay, we're going to explain the changes in the July 2018 version of the form. There's only one change, a slight change and that affects the miscellaneous structure shafts, which is the tubes grouting, and the other changes affect only the bridges. So let's talk about the most simple change, which is, let's go to the tubes grouting. Let me illustrate with one example I have already filled up here. Let me go to tubes grouting. Okay, so we added just this legend and one example to facilitate inspectors how to input the data here. This is all they need to do that. Okay, the only input they need to do here is this one here, because the this number of tubes, this thing comes generated automatically from the reinforces spaces from here. Okay, so based on this one, the computer has generated some theoretical volumes of grouting that are required to fill the tubes. So we're just doing, following this instruction, we're just filling up the cubic feet we use. So the bags of grout used typically have an information on how many cubic feet of grout is yielded per bag. So let's say we got an example when the grout is yielding 0.43 cubic feet per bag, and let's say we use 2 bags. I'm not going to use this example. The example says if I use 1.5, okay, let's use it. If I say 1.5, then I would enter 0.65. I would enter 0.65. So if I use 2, then I would use 2 times 0.43, which is then 0.86. Okay. So let us say we use, instead of this example, because let's say we use 0.86 for all of them. All right. For all the tubes, so we got 6 tubes, 0.86. All right. So you're barely there. You're barely there. You're barely okay. The reason I change is because if I input, like in the example, if I input 0.65, well, that would have been something went wrong, right? Something went wrong. It didn't. Sorry, 0.65, 0.65, 0.65, and 0.65. So I will get only, I would get 3.9, significantly less. Okay, so that's pretty much how this form is filled. Alrighty, just please read the legend how to use it. We just have an example here how to do it, how to input that thing. Is a very simple form. Now this change was included in both the main structures and the miscellaneous shafts forms. Now we're going to talk about other changes that were only included on the bridges form, on the 85, not on the 84. And the reason is because for bridges the situation may get a little complex sometimes because of the use of 2 casings. If the contractor uses a temporary casing and an outside permanent casing and so forth, so we may have some issues. Okay. One of the things that we did for the form is to include an additional value here called highest concrete elevation in casing 1 during pour. We also have this theoretical top elevation that's that's going to happen in any, whether you use 1 casing or 2. It's always there. We included that in the previous one, and we use that to make sure we compute that right. Let me explain in a figure what are we trying to address there. Okay. There may be situations where the contractor uses this window to let the contractor flow to minimize the waste instead of letting the thing spill from the top of the concrete from here. So you may find contractor who opens window in the casing. So like in this particular sketch. So for purposes of computing the theoretical volume chart, we need to fix this up to here. We cannot let it go to here because it's gonna overestimate the theoretical volume. Once we overflow, then that's what we care. That's what we care for. Now that's what we did here, and that's for example, in this particular case, if the top is +5, that's the window. That's what we fix that thing here. Okay. Now the other change has to do with this one, and this. If you click here, there is an explanation. It says here that when two cases are used, enter the highest elevation of concrete inside casing 1. This could be lower, and when approved by the engineer, let me go back to the sketch, and we had that thing already being included or proposed in additional installation plan, is that the contractor is proposing that he's going to pour the concrete up to certain elevation up to here. No, he's not going to overflow and then spill here. No, he's going to pour up to here. Then continue pour up to here. Okay, that's pretty much what he's going to do. So we needed to add this thing in order to compute the theoretical volume through the pouring. That's not going to affect the actual volume because the actual depth and elevation is going to be the same no matter what he does. So here is, he may do that up to here and then drop it and do something anyway there. But let's take a look at something. There are other changes there. So let's talk about this one first. So here it is. We're just going to input the highest port elevation the contractor is planning to use for a particular shaft, or whatever he actually used. Contractor may have this casing, and he says, well, if you see that, okay, he stopped the concrete here, certain elevation, and then he withdrew the casing. That's what you input here. That is the elevation you're going to input here. So that way, the software will be able to draw this line properly. In this particular case, as you can see, since we know he used -9 in the inside casing, he's going, as soon as the concrete hit -9 in this particular example, so he withdrew the casing, so then he can do this. All right. This drop is just because it's the natural change of size of casing. Geometrically, it will make the concrete depth or the concrete elevation to drop, like we show in previous videos. Like here, just by the fact that going from one casing, smaller casing, to the bigger one, without adding or taking away concrete, this should be a drop. All right, which is what's being represented there. And after that point, it's going to continue following the slope of the casing, the outside casing. This little difference here is due to the thickness of the casing. If I input here, if my casing is 0, you will notice that the curve now is that right there, right? Following, strictly speaking, but unfortunately, or in real case scenario, we do have some casings thickness, and then that's what you see this little drop, but it has to be parallel anyway. So from this point, it has to follow this slope. Okay. Now, the other thing we included in this form, again for the bridge form, for the bridges, it has to do with these changes on reference. So we need to handle the reference elevation. Okay, we have added more tables. Here we got up to 3 in the first one, and if the concrete goes beyond, then we may have even more tables. And the thing, we added more tables and more tables to change reference because the situation may not stop right there. We may approve the contractor in complex situations that he may pull the casing, not completely, but maybe some depth, and then the reference will change anyway. But let us assume, so to explain how this works, let us assume we only have one change of reference. So we only have to deal with two references. One is the interior casing first. Let's say in this example it was +8. Then later on we pull this casing out, and then we're going to have to take the measurements from elevation +5. That's going to be our second reference. So there's going to be a change. So in order to make the form plot correctly, we have to make an adjustment to the depth after we change the casing. The reason is because we don't have an automatic way to handle these changes, and the plot is being, the curve that you see is being plotted based on depth elevations, and these depth elevations are computed from the original reference. So we have to adjust it, because the spreadsheet is always thinking I'm coming from elevation 8 from my original reference elevation. So if there's a change, if we change the reference from 8 to 5, we're going to see here, let's say after I change the casing, actually I change the elevation, I'm sorry, I measure, for example, something here. Let's say I measure 10 feet, but I need to input this one. What would have been the measure if from the original 8 feet? So in this particular case, we know it's a 3 feet difference, so I have to add 3 feet, so I have to enter 13, not just 10. So to make it compute the elevation correct. That's why we have these tables here. So in this particular case, for example, we have, let's say we are illustrating somewhere here. This is what we're illustrating. The original elevation was 8, now we changed to 5. So if we measure 10, this is being computed automatically. Let's see, for example, this is computed automatic. It's for you to help you from that point on what information to enter. Okay, so there's a 3 feet difference. Okay. So if you measure 10, you need to enter 13. And that's why you go here. When you go to the table, you input this one. This one is, for example, this is happening after the casing removed completely and the new reference elevation is 5. Then you would input 13, and you continue. Let's say the next one, you actually say you measure 0, then you input 3. So that's just an example. Okay, so you input this 3, whatever. All right. Now, I have an example here. We have a real case scenario that, or something more complex, that, for example, the contractor didn't pull the thing at once, but stop the casing in the middle. So we have an extra change of reference. For example, come back here. We have, for example, the original reference elevation was 8. Then he pulled the casing up 12 feet. All right. Put the casing up 12 feet. That would have been something. Imagine that this casing is going up, and then the casing stops somewhere there. So now instead of this is being 8, now it's 20. So we got a 12 feet that we have to adjust for. So then I started measuring from that high elevation. Hopefully the contractor is going to have somebody who's going to be measuring the depth from the top of the casing at that point. So let's say if the person measuring the ring, the inspector is saying, oh, 35 from here, but in reality, from original reference is 23. So that's what I need to input here. Okay, that's what's in here. Okay, that's what I need to input here. I'm sorry, here on the 23. Change one. Here is the note, and you put a note. Change your reference. Casing one, pull up to 12 feet. And then you input 23, and everything is computed from the new reference, and it change again the reference. Okay. Now the other thing we added to, as you can see here, we want to monitor also to record the tip elevations of the casing as the contractor is pulling out. So this allows us to do that. Once you input these change elevations and you input the casing length of the segment, or whatever the casing length you have at that point, it's going to compute what elevation you have. Okay, what elevation you have at the bottom. That's very important for us to check if there's a problem later on, because maybe the contractor pulls the casing too soon. We want to understand why we kept, whether there was enough head in the concrete not to have bridge from the water outside. All right. So that was pretty much it. Now, so the curves can plot properly now, then, and then the actual curve will be plot properly if we do it that way, if we adjust the elevations. Now, the other thing is we added is that these tables, yeah, in the past, yeah, they are outside the view. I'm sorry, yeah, they are outside the printing area. So, only the inspector will be able to see, but in order for us to keep the record, so we added this one. You don't need to add something. Let me see, for example, there is something called reference change tables, and there is no input needed here. It's generated automatically. Basically, it's copying what you input here. All right. All right. So in the first table, it's just gonna bring back the first 4 changes. In this particular case, this example, there were only two changes, so it's gonna bring you this one. And as you can see, this is just copy of whatever you have in this. Let me go back. Whatever you input and calculated here. That's all. And that's pretty much the changes that were included in the latest version. All right. So thank you very much for listening, and good luck in your projects. Bye bye.